The story opens in the frozen, foggy woods of the Ardennes, 1944. A high-level Allied security detail stops alone, muddy soldier walking toward a restricted command bunker. The man wears a dented M1 helmet with no stars, a grease-stained field jacket, and boots caked in thick, gray clay. When the MPs order him to halt and identify himself, he simply stares at them with eyes that have seen too much war. The lead officer, frustrated by the soldier's silence and lack of military courtesy, prepares to have him detained as a suspected infiltrator. Just as the situation reaches a breaking point, a senior officer steps out of the bunker, stops dead in his tracks, and whispers in shock, "George, what the hell happened to you?" The infiltrator is General Patton, returning from a solo reconnaissance mission that the High Command didn't even know he had undertaken. Before we continue our story, make sure to hit like, share, and subscribe button, and really, I'm curious, where are you watching from? Drop your country name in the comments. I love seeing how far our stories travel. The transformation took place in the back of a canvas-covered truck, far from the prying eyes of the press corps. General George S. Patton stripped away the layers of his legendary persona like a snake shedding skin. Off came the ikat-patterned breeches and the high-tissued cavalry boots that shone like black glass. He unbuckled the belt holding the ivory-handled revolvers, the symbols that told the world exactly who he was, and laid them in a velvet-lined case. In their place, he pulled on a standard-issue field jacket, grease-stained and frayed at the cuffs. He swapped the gleaming three-star helmet for a battered M1 pot with a deep dent on the crown and a missing chin strap. As he smeared a handful of cold, gray French mud across his chest and shoulders, the transformation was complete. "When I want the men to see me, I dress like a general," he whispered to his driver, Mims, who watched the metamorphosis in silence. "But when I want to see the war, I dress like a supply sergeant." To the German snipers scanning the horizon, a man in polished brass was a trophy. A man in a muddy jacket was just another piece of the landscape, beneath the notice of a valuable bullet. This was his armor of grime, a tactical invisibility that allowed him to walk where no other commander dared, hunting for the raw, unvarnished truth that only lives in the dirt. By October 1944, the rain in Moselle Valley had turned the earth into a viscous, waist-deep slurry that swallowed tanks and men alike. General Omar Bradley, the soft-spoken soldier's general, arrived at a forward observation post near Metz to survey the German defenses across the river. He climbed into a crumbling stone watchtower where several men were huddled over maps and binoculars. In the corner, a man in a filthy, insignia-free uniform was hunched over a drawing pad, his hands moving with surgical precision. Bradley, assuming the man was a low-level intelligence lieutenant, leaned over to inspect the work. The sketches were breathtaking, detailed tactical renderings of German machine gun nests, hidden pillboxes, and probable command posts that hadn't appeared on any official headquarters briefing. "Excellent work, Lieutenant," Bradley remarked, genuinely impressed by the reconnaissance. "Your attention to detail is exactly what the Third Army needs." The man didn't look up, his pencil continuing to scratch against the paper. "Thanks, Brad," the voice rasped. Bradley froze, the casual use of his nickname like a physical blow. He turned to look at the profile of the man. The sharp nose, the piercing eyes, the set of the jaw, and the realization hit him like a shell. "George, what the hell are you doing here?" Patton finally looked up, a mischievous glint in his eyes. "Reconnaissance, Brad. Same as your boys, except I'm better at it." "Thunderthart." Bradley gestured to the maps, stunned that a three-star general was doing the dangerous, gritty work of a scout site, 35 to 43, 48 to 50. By December 1944, the woods near Saarbrücken were a graveyard of shattered pines and frozen mud. Patton was out again, far ahead of his command post, conducting a personal reconnaissance of the German lines. He stood in a clearing, his binocular lenses shielded from the glare, as he studied a ridge line bristling with enemy activity. Suddenly, the sharp crack snap of a high-velocity bullet broke the silence, the projectile whistling inches from his ear sight, 55 to 56. His driver, Mims, scrambled for the cover of their mud-caked Jeep, shouting for the general to get down. Patton didn't flinch. He stood like a statue, eyes fixed on the tree line across the valley, as two more shots kicked up frozen dirt at his feet. "He's not aiming at me," Patton said with a terrifyingly calm, clinical detachment. "He's aiming at the Jeep. He thinks we're a two-man supply detail." It was a chilling testament to the success of his disguise. To the German sniper, a man in a gleaming helmet with 3 stars was a prize worth a silver medal. A man in a filthy, insignia-free field jacket was just another piece of a landscape, hardly worth the waste of a precious cartridge. _start. When a 4th bullet hissed close enough for Patton to feel the air pressure, he finally stepped behind the vehicle, conceding that the sniper was finally getting curious sight. 59-60. _start. He waited exactly 5 minutes before driving away at a walking pace, refusing to give the hidden marksman the satisfaction of a retreat sight. 64-65. To Patton, being just another American was his ultimate shield. In the biting gray of January 1945, Private First Class David Richards crouched in a frozen foxhole, his fingers too numb to feel the trigger guard of his M1 Garand. The Ardennes was a landscape of jagged ice and misery. He and his squad were mid-sentence in a chorus of bitter complaints when an older man drifted out of the tree line. He was a ghost of a soldier, his field jacket caked in layers of frozen muck and his helmet missing any sign of rank or polish. Assuming he was just another weary officer from a rear echelon supply unit, the men didn't stand. They just shifted to make room in the dirt. The stranger didn't offer a lecture on courage or the glory of the cause. He simply sat down in the slush and asked them what they needed. For 20 minutes, the muddy major listened as they poured out their frustrations. The boots that leaked, the rations that arrived frozen, and the dwindling supply of ammunition. He pulled a small notebook from his pocket and recorded every grievance with clinical precision. As he stood to leave, one soldier asked his name. The man gave a sharp, wolfish grin and replied, "Patton," before vanishing back into the fog. By the next morning, the miracle arrived. Fresh rations, cold weather gear, and crates of ammunition appeared at the line. Patton hadn't just commanded them. He had lived their misery to fix it. The war photographers of the Third Army moved with the momentum of the armored divisions, but they operated under a strict, enigmatic set of orders from Patton's inner circle. They were given clearance to shoot almost anything. The carnage of the hedgerows, the liberation of French villages, and the grit of the infantry, but they were forbidden from photographing the commanding general whenever he was near the front lines. The directive was clear. The world must only see the parade Patton. _start. The public image required the gleaming 3-star helmet, the polished boots, and the ivory-handled revolvers that projected an aura of invincible authority. 110-115. Behind this wall of censorship, a few rare frames were captured of the ghost general. One photographer managed to snap a candid image of Patton standing in a muddy field near the German border. In the photo, he looks nothing like the titan of propaganda. _start. He is dirty, his eyes are sunken with exhaustion, and he is wearing the anonymous, insignia-free field jacket that allowed him to blend into the chaos of the frontline reconnaissance site. 117-118. Intelligence officers immediately classified these images, locking them away in high-security archives. They knew that Patton's survival depended entirely on the enemy's ignorance. _start. If the German High Command realized that the most feared general in the Allied arsenal frequently moved through their sights looking like a common, weary supply officer, he would be dead within a week. 119-122. This classified reality remained hidden until long after the guns fell silent. In March 1945, the heart of Germany was a landscape of collapsing resistance and pockets of fanatical defiance. Patton was navigating through recently captured territory, his jeep splashing through deep ruts of melted snow. He was miles ahead of his security detail, accompanied only by his driver, both stripped of any identifying rank. As they rounded a bend in a dense forest, they came face to face with a squad of German soldiers who had not yet received the word of their army's surrender. The Germans instinctively raised their rifles, the muzzles leveled directly at the Americans' chests. Patton signaled Mims to stay still. He stepped out of the jeep, his hands visible and empty, his face a mask of bored indifference. "Americans?" a German corporal asked in broken English. Patton nodded. "Senator Swarstart." "Officers," the German pressed, looking for a reason to end his war without losing his life or his pride sight. 126 to 127. Patton looked at the young, desperate faces before him. He could have claimed to be a major, a safe lie that would have kept him anonymous. Instead, he drew himself up and spoke in perfect, commanding German. "General, 3rd Army." The air in the clearing seemed to vanish. The Germans froze, their eyes widening at the name that had become a legend of terror and respect across the fatherland. After a heartbeat of agonizing tension, the corporal lowered his Mauser. "To surrender to Patton is honor," he whispered. "Senator Swarstart." In that moment, Patton's true identity, usually his most guarded secret, became the only weapon capable of winning the battle without firing a single shot. Sight 135 to 136. After the guns fell silent and the maps were folded away, historians and fellow officers began to peel back the layers of the Third Army's success. They turned to Patton's inner circle, men like General Gay and Colonel Koch, to understand why the most flamboyant general of the war had spent so much of it as a ghost. The answers revealed a leadership philosophy rooted in a desperate, almost obsessive need for the truth. Senator Swarstart, Patton believed that the sanitized reports flowing into headquarters were often 12 hours too old and polished by staff officers who only told him what they thought he wanted to hear. Sight 46 to 47. By shedding his stars, he stripped away the performance that soldiers gave for generals, allowing him to see the raw reality of the terrain and the true state of his men. In the quiet of his post-war journals, Patton's own words provided the final resolution. He didn't live in the mud because he sought the thrill of danger, but because he felt the weight of every order he gave. "A general who doesn't know what his soldiers are experiencing," he wrote, "is a general who will make mistakes that cost lives." He viewed his anonymity not as a game, but as a fundamental responsibility to the 22-year-olds living in the foxholes. Ultimately, the man who was often mistaken for a homeless supply sergeant proved that the most effective command doesn't come from a distant throne, but from the willingness to be nobody special so that you can understand everything. The mystery of the identity unknown was, in truth, the ultimate act of devotion to the men who followed him into the dark. The footage and photographs taken of the ghost general remained buried in Allied intelligence vaults for decades, far outliving the conflict they documented. While the public was fed a steady diet of newsreels featuring the polished, ivory-handled hero, the military censors worked tirelessly to suppress any image of the man in the mud. The reason was a matter of cold, tactical survival. Senator Swarstart, had the German OKW realized that the legendary Patton was frequently operating as an anonymous, single-vehicle scout in a plain field jacket, the entire front line would have become a hunting ground specifically designed to catch him in the open sight. 110 to 113, 120 to 122. These classified records showed a commander who was often indistinguishable from the refugees and infantrymen he passed on the road, his eyes hollowed by the same lack of sleep and his boots caked in the same gray clay. When these files were finally declassified, they revealed a version of history that the official propaganda had carefully polished away. They told the story of a general who found his greatest strength not in his rank, but in his ability to disappear into the reality of the war. The classified general was a man who understood that his image was a weapon for the public, but his anonymity was a shield for his soldiers. Senator Swarstart, by keeping these images hidden, the military inadvertently preserved the mystery of the man who refused to lead from a throne, ensuring that his true, muddy face remained a secret shared only by the men who lived in the foxholes beside him. Sight 116 to 119, 158. The final legacy of George S. Patton is not found in the gleaming monuments or the polished medals, but in the enduring principle that a commander belongs at the point of greatest danger. His identity, unknown strategy, was the ultimate expression of a leadership style built on shared sacrifice. Senator Forstard. He believed that the distance between a headquarters and a foxhole was a breeding ground for catastrophic mistakes, and he bridged that gap by living as the very men he commanded cite. 144 to 147, 152 to 153. Senator Forstard. Throughout the war, Eisenhower, Bradley, and countless other high-ranking officers were stunned to find the most famous general in the world acting as a common scout, a supply officer, or a map-maker in the dirt site. 148 to 150. As the war drew to a close, the refrain, "Sir, that is patent," became more than a statement of recognition. It became a testament to a man who chose responsibility over safety. He had walked alone through enemy-held woods, slept in freezing slush, and faced down German squads with nothing but his name and his honesty. Senator Forstard. He proved that the most powerful thing a leader can do is to be present, to see what his soldiers see, to feel what they feel, and to never ask of them a sacrifice he was not willing to make himself cite. 154 to 155, 160. Senator Forstard. In the end, the general who looked like a homeless supply sergeant was the same man who drove the Third Army further and faster than anyone thought possible, because he led not from the rear, but from the heart of the mud itself cite. 22, 50, 158 to 159. History remembers the ivory-handled revolvers and the gleaming stars, but the men who fought in the mud remember the ghost general who sat beside them in the freezing dark. Patton knew that command without presence was a mistake that cost lives. If you believe that true leadership is found in the dirt of the front lines rather than the safety of the rear, then join us. Subscribe to dive deeper into the hidden stories of the heroes who chose the truth over the stars. Don't let the real history stay classified. Click below to join the ranks.